Lately, you guys have been talking more about seeing my dog try to do tricks and seeing her in the video, so I figured I'll appease you one more time, and here is another video of Zoe. So since you guys don't think my dogs can actually do the tricks, here they are. Zoe, shake. Down, down, wait, and to top it off, bang. Good girl. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed that video, but now we get back to U.S. history, and we're going to talk about Section 4, which is going to be 3 slides pretty quick about the New Deal coalition. So the first thing to talk about is the court packing plan. Now, FDR, he did a lot of things for the country, and the New Deal just completely revolutionized the way that people think about government entirely and what the government is able to do and the powers that they have. Even, I mean, first and foremost, how many times he's going to run for office. Most people kind of stuck to the Washington precedent. After the 4 years, they step aside and let the next person step over. But FDR, he continues to run year after year after year. And while he's in office, he is just passing all these different laws. I know I've said it before, but I mean, it's just crazy to think about the ones that are still around today, like the FDIC, the SEC, the Social Security Act, the Glass-Steagall Act, all these different things that are going to be passing, the NIRA, the NRA. But unfortunately for Roosevelt, a lot of these laws are actually coming back as unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court, I haven't really talked about them in a long time, but the Supreme Court does a lot for the New Deal. And when I say they do a lot for the New Deal, they do a lot to crush the New Deal, because most of these laws come back as unconstitutional. And FDR is just furious. He is so upset that he calls a juror of 9 old men are able to decide whether or not the people can follow these laws and whether or not they are constitutional or not. So because of that reason, FDR comes up with a plan to pack the courts. And this is something that it makes him look really, really bad and really selfish. So what the court packing plan is, and talking about the judicial branch, in our Constitution, it does not say how many Supreme Court justices we have to have. It's completely up to Congress. But generally speaking, Congress, especially in recent years, they're going to keep it at 9. They want to keep it an odd number, but they have always kept it at 9. So because of that, the 9 justices, and pretty much going into it, it was 4-4. There was 4 justices who were always going to be against him, 4 justices that were always going to be on his side, but that one independent generally was on the side that was against him. So his plan to pack the courts went like this. It was, if you were on the Supreme Court and you were over 70 years old, you would get an assistant. And he kind of downplayed this. He made it seem like because you're 70, you're not mentally capable or smart enough to be able to keep doing the reading and the discussions with the Supreme Court. So it's more like, hey guys, I'm helping you out. This is me being a nice guy, FDR, that I'm going to give you an assistant who's going to do all the reading, all the discussing, and they get a vote. And what that would do, that would allow FDR to add justices pretty much immediately. There was 4 justices that were already over that, and there was 2 justices that were already in their late 60s. So pretty much instantaneously, 6 new justices would have been added to the courts, and this would have allowed there to be 15 members of the Supreme Court. And why the Democrats were really against this, it sets a bad precedent. Every time that the president is losing in a Supreme Court case, they could just add more justices and add more people who are going to be on their side. And really, the Supreme Court, they're supposed to be unbiased, but you're not going to get people who are unbiased. People always have a feeling or an opinion towards something. But kind of with this, it splits the Democratic Party. And the Southern Democrats think that this is going to really hurt the civil rights case, the civil rights cause, because you're just going to get a president in there who's going to be against civil rights. And the Democrats, they control both the House and the Senate, but even they are going to be against it. And even though there's a lot of uproar about the scheme, and I'll tell you, it does not go through, it does help FDR. And the reason it helps FDR so much is while this is going on, the court, they kind of back down a little bit. They kind of, take a more of a hands-off approach about the New Deal. So while it failed in the sense that it did not pass, it was successful for FDR because he was able to get the Supreme Court to start approving some of his plans and policies under the New Deal. So that's the first one, again, kind of looked at as a negative for FDR. And the second one is something known as the Roosevelt Recession. So again, we always blame the president anytime something goes wrong. If it's going well, yeah, we take credit ourselves, and most of the time we put the blame onto somebody else. So early in 1937, the economy seemed to be just about ready to recover, just about ready to be on that path of what it was in the 1920s. And FDR does he makes a mistake. I'll be honest. He doesn't really have the best philosophy at this time. And what he does, he orders the WPA and the PWA to cut their spending. And really what this does, and it's done at a horrible time in 1937, it makes people unemployed. The people who were employed under the WPA and the PWA, by cutting their spending, yeah, that's going to be cutting jobs. So because of that, really, people are unemployed. The second thing, when this is done in 1937, this is the first time that Social Security is supposed to be paid out to the individuals who are deserving of it. So not only that, they're losing jobs, and these people who are having these jobs, they pay tax dollars. Well, now they're losing even more tax dollars through the Social Security Act that was put through the second New Deal. But nonetheless, we blame the president, and now he starts to get the idea of something known as Keynesianism. And this is something that's a kind of an economic theory that believes the country, especially in a recession, it needs to go into debt. And it needs to go into debt because that is what is going to help America. That is what is going to get people back to work. That's what's going to open factories. That's what's going to keep businesses operating. So while it's bad to deficit spend, and I'll tell you right now, do not do this. The government, they do deficit spending quite a bit, but I'll be honest, they have a much better credit score than most of you. So they go into this deficit spending, and really he kind of backtracks a little bit. He says he's going to cut from the WPA and the PWA, which he does, but then shortly thereafter he goes back to Congress and asks for about $3 billion. But again, we talked about the coalition, the people that were against FDR and Huey Long and Dr. Charles Coughlin and Francis Townsend, these plans. The New Deal is working, but it's not working as fast and efficiently as people want. And then we get to the last of the New Deal reforms. We'll talk about two here pretty quickly. But the last of the New Deal reforms, the first one, the National Housing Act. So this is going to be done to kind of counteract those shanty towns or Hoovervilles that were created, and it establishes $500 million to build low-cost housing. So again, it's government-provided housing. It's going to cost a lot of money up front, but in the end, it's going to benefit a lot of citizens. And, this is something, again, we talk a lot about how these laws that were passed are still around. There is still a ton of low-cost housing in the United States, and the government is able to subsidize a lot of it. They are able to profit on some of it eventually once the years and years go on, but this really is done to get people off the streets. It's done to help people. And then the second one, the Farm Security Administration. Now, this time, again, farming is starting to become a little bit more profitable. During the Dust Bowl, again, you could not grow anything. The soil was just too dry. They kept overworking it. But the next one, the Farm Security Administration, is able to create business loans to tenants so they could purchase their own farm. And really what that refers to is a tenant rents land. And when they were renting land at this time from the different landlords, they were getting a horrible, horrible deal on it. So because of that, really they were working the land and getting next to nothing, a minimal profit. And the reason that this was done is farming, it's expensive. It's an expensive industry to get into. I mean, just think about all the stuff that you have to buy, the tractors, combines, all the other machinery, and the upkeep on it is quite a bit. So because of that, a lot of people cannot afford to start their own farm, and they were forced to basically do this for somebody else and get almost no money. So the Farm Security Administration is created to give out loans to tenants, really just to help kickstart and start to stimulate the economy in various aspects.